So we're looking at John's Gospel, and I thought it would be useful to have a little bit of an introduction about John's Gospel, a very brief one, as we set off in this journey. I personally love John's Gospel for loads of different reasons, but perhaps one of them is because I'm one of those people that enjoys a good movie, but I also enjoy some of the behind the scenes stuff as well. And I think in John's Gospel you see a bit more of the behind the scenes of what's going on. Some of the more personal interactions between Jesus and his disciples, and the personal interactions between Jesus and individuals as well, those who are close to him. Now, one of the reasons for that is because it's well believed that, and generally agreed, that the writer of John's Gospel was actually one of Jesus' disciples, John, the brother of James, and one of Jesus' inner circle, one of his closest friends. In fact, it's in John chapter 21, verse 24, where it says that this disciple who calls himself the disciple who Jesus loved. It never uses John's name. It says that this is the disciple who testifies to these things and who wrote them down, and we know that his testimony is true. So this is the account of Jesus from John the apostle. He's the source of it. And so this is an eyewitness account, someone who was there, close to Jesus, and it was probably written down around the end of the 1st century. Some people maybe suggest it's a bit later than that, or some people even a bit earlier, but it's probably around the end of the 1st century, around 85 AD. In fact, the earliest fragment we have of any of the Gospels is a portion of John's Gospel from John chapter 18, and it's a little fragment of papyrus that's found in Manchester in the Rylands Library. It's called the Rylands Papyrus, and it was found in Egypt, and it's been dated around the kind of mid to early 2nd century AD. And so for the Gospel of John to have been transmitted from where it was probably written in Ephesus all the way down to Egypt means that we probably have a good idea that it was towards the end of the 1st century that it was written down, which backs up John as an old man writing down his memoirs of Jesus. The style of it is very different to the other Gospels that we've mentioned before. It's more thematic, it's more poetic, it's more theological perhaps, and it focuses on 7 main signs that Jesus does to demonstrate who he is and what he's about. There's also a number of I am sayings as Jesus self-discloses a bit more about who he is and his own identity. Lots of action happens in and around Jerusalem and Jesus' various visits to Jerusalem until about halfway through the book, around chapter 12, and then it zooms in on the final week of Jesus' life and his final visit to Jerusalem, and what happens during what we term as Holy Week. And then from chapter 20 and 21 we see the experience of the resurrection and Jesus engaging with his disciples after he's risen from the dead, and interacting with them again on quite a personal level. But the whole reason why John's Gospel was written, actually John highlights it in John chapter 20, 30 to 31. It says the purpose, the reason why this book has been written at all, it's not just to preserve the story of Jesus to be passed on to other people. That's true of all the Gospels, but John's purpose is all these events, that they're written down so that you, the reader, may believe that Jesus is the Messiah, the Son of God, that he is who he says he is. And by believing that you may have life. Now, that's really key, because there are certain words that keep on appearing and keep on resonating throughout John's Gospel. One of them is word, one of them is life, one of them is light, and then there's grace and truth. All of these concepts keep on repeating through John's Gospel, so keep an eye out for them. So as we read and explore and reflect, may we believe afresh that Jesus is the Messiah, the chosen one, the King, that he is the Son of God, God walking among us. And in doing that, may we grow to know him more, to love him more, to serve him more, and to have his life grown more and more within us as we journey through John's Gospel.